Hey everybody, welcome back to the Mount Shasta pre-interviews.
Yeah.
We have Lorien Fenton.
Yeah, this woman is incredible. Just getting to have a few moments of chit chat with her. Ourselves are having the pleasure of getting to know her for the first time right now as we sit down and chat with her. We of course are inviting you to join us as if you're sitting in the room with us, maybe eavesdropping in on a super cool conversation, and get you familiar with her energy, and of course invite you to intermingle with her and visit her websites and get yourself connected with her further. And of course, inviting all of you out to the Mount Shasta conference that we're going to be at. We're very excited, very honored to be part of that, in which case, of course, you'll have the opportunity to see her live, see her presentation, and really learn a whole lot of great information. Very, very, I think, very exciting information. You know, there is this time of now that we're all kind of been talking about for a long time, where a lot of this information, or, you know, broad-minded information, is really coming to the forefront. It's been there for a long time, but I think more and more people are finally starting to come into realizing that there's far more than the holographic illusion that's going on in front of us immediately as human beings.
Well, there's been too many things that have happened to everybody.
Yeah,
so.
And really embracing our fellow light beings wearing a human costume that have information that lead us to the broader knowing of how intergalactic, how stellar we are, how source energy we are. And she certainly is one of those people. So we want to invite you to come on in. Thank you so much for being with us and for sitting down and having an interview with us this evening.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it. I just wanted to say a quick thing. I see all of your organite back there. I just had to show you the one that's by the side of my bed, my little pyramid that I sleep with every night. So there we go. And then I've got my white lady behind me that it's hard to see her, but we'll talk about her in a few minutes because I got the blinds and I didn't realize it, but it's kind of cool because that's exactly what I saw. I couldn't really see anything until she got close to me. And really in that painting, you can't see anything because the sunlight's going through it. So it's kind of cool. I had no idea this would happen at this time of night. So I'm very excited about it.
If you don't mind, let's give everybody, if you can, a little bit of a background about yourself. You know, a lot of people kind of started on this crazy activity experience lifetime from the time that they were young. Some kind of fell into it about midstream. Some people actually had kind of a massive experience of an awakening occur. Can you explain to everybody just a little bit, kind of where did all of this stuff happen for you?
Yeah, it started early for me. I was 18 months old, and my parents decided to go to spend the weekend at a beach house. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, and Portland's not far from the Oregon coast. I think they went to Rockaway or Astoria, if you're familiar with the area. A friend had a kind of a cabin house there. My grandmother was with them, and it was just me, my parents. My sisters weren't born yet. It was just the four of us going down to the coast. And they got there, and there was a big note on the table, apparently, that said, "Rat poison everywhere. Be sure to pick it up. We know you have a daughter that's crawling," from their friends. So they thought they picked up all the rat poison, but my dad, you remember the old days when under the staircase they put wood to burn in the fireplaces? Yeah. So my father opened it up and they were hanging their coats on it, and they left it open because there were always hooks inside the door, and they were hanging their coats up and getting the firewood out. Well, I crawled in there, and there was a big pie tin apparently of rat poison, and it's warfarin, and warfarin is really sweet, and that way the rats eat it and they die a sad death. Okay. So I'm in there chewing away on all this. And, and then my mother finds me and they go, oh my God, you know, and they wash my mouth out and they're trying to get it all out. My mother says, oh, she'll be fine. My grandmother, a psychic, and we can get into that another day, another time, says she is not fine. We are going directly to the hospital. By the time they got me to the hospital, blood was, I know this is kind of gross, folks, but it's really what happened. It was kind of seeping through to my skin, through my veins, because it just thins out your blood so much that it was looking like bruises all over my body. And they were really freaked out. And the doctor didn't think they'd be able to save me. And they put charcoal in me and they pumped my stomach and God knows what else they did to me. I don't remember any of this, but I will tell you this. My parents had to go do something, and I can't remember the story too well because my father's got dementia, my mom's not doing so well either, and they don't remember why they left, but they did leave. They left my grandmother in the crib room with me at the hospital, and they said, now be sure to stay awake because we want you to tell us if anything happened. The doctor, you know, just stay awake. They left. I think they went home, but whatever. So my grandmother is there. She's falling asleep and she is awoken by this person behind me here, this white lady vision that she called it her angel. And here's why. When she was 13 years old, she was dying of the Spanish flu that was going around in 1918, or she was, 12 or 13, whatever. And this woman came through her window and hovered over her and told her she was going to be fine, that she had work to do, and that she was going to be great and all's okay. Sure enough, she pulled through it and she went on to do a lot of things and she became a Rosicrucian and blah. I mean, it goes on and on, whatever. So I'm like in the crib and I'm dying. So everybody thinks I'm going to be dead by morning, right? And she sees this vision of this white lady over me and says, or this angel, she always called it her angel, and said, oh, she'll be fine. And she went to sleep. So my parents come back in the room and they're furious with her. They're just like, why are you falling asleep? She could have died. You could have hold her, and all this. My mom's crying and my grandma's like, oh, she'll be fine. I'm going home. And she went home. So that's the story. And I'm sticking to it because that's, what happened. So there you go. And then about, oh God, it's so many things happened to me since then. I mean, I've got stories and hopefully I can get my book done soon because people ask me all the time. I mean, I've been on radio for 10 years now. And in 10 years, I have told just all the stories, but it's taken me 10 years to get through them all. There's the time the house appeared in the field. There's, oh my God, there's the rabbit story. Oh my God, the rabbit was the one I told on Coast to Coast because I had to have something, George is going, it's got to be 20 minutes long and it's got to be quick because we got other people to get to. And I'm like, okay. So I came up with my rabbit story and it's kind of interesting. I think I will tell it today. I was about 6 years old at that time. And I told you just now that I grew up in Portland, Oregon. And we used to go to the Multnomah County Fair because I grew up on a small farm and we had sheep and chickens and, the whole bit. And we grew our food and what have you. My grandfather and grandmother, again, are driving us, me, and my little sister to this fair. And the big thing back then, folks, was only corn dogs, cotton candy, Ferris wheel, and 4-H. 4-H was huge. I mean, there are animals everywhere. And, and a country, not a country band, but a hoedown band and people would square dance. And this was 1962 or 63. Okay. So I'm about 6 or 7, we think. And I can't remember exactly what happened next, but all I know is I end up at the rabbits and I fell in love with this black rabbit and it had won first prize. And the brother and sister team that were there that had raised the rabbit and won the prize said I could hold it. And I was like, oh my God, I get to hold it. So I sit down in the hay or the chips or wood chips or whatever. I'm holding this rabbit and my grandfather and grandmother left. Everybody left. I'm there 45 minutes, probably maybe an hour holding this rabbit. I absolutely fell in love with it. And they come back and they say, okay, it's time to go. I'm like, no, I want the rabbit. And they're like, okay, can't have the rabbit. My grandfather says, I'm not building a hutch. There's no way. You can't have a rabbit. No. Okay. I start, throwing a fit as usual. Then he asked the brother and sister, he kind of got exasperated with me and asked the brother and sister, could we buy it? And they said, no, it's going up for auction later. And, or they said, we're going to keep, I don't remember what the story was. No, it was no. So we get in the car and I'm like really upset because I wanted this rabbit more than anything in the whole world. It's the first thing that I remember actually falling in love with, in that weird sense that love is for a kid. I just fell in love with this thing. I don't even know what it meant at the time. It was just pure love. And so I don't know if you guys remember this, but back in the old days in the Ford, sedan, there was bucket seats and nobody had a seatbelt on. And my little sister's in the back flying around and I'm probably smacking her around. Who knows? Nowadays you are strapped in like you're going to Mars. I mean, literally, it's crazy. And, I feel sorry for the kids nowadays who don't get to fight with their brothers and sisters in the back seat like we used to. I mean, it was a blast. It really was. You think about it. Now they can't even reach each other, So, anyhow, so I'm hanging over the front seat and I'm sliding back and forth over that big bucket seat between my grandfather and my grandmother. And I'd whisper in her ear, I really want a rabbit, Grandma. Can you talk Grandpa into giving me a rabbit? And it's like, no, I'm not doing it. Then I'd slide over to him and I go, oh, please give me a rabbit. You can build a hutch. A hutch isn't hard to build. I'm coming up with every excuse in the book, right? And it's finally, they look at each other and go, no. So I go, okay. And I thought, I'm not going to cry. I'm going to pray because God will give me a rabbit if I want one. Okay. I knew that. I knew God would take care of me because I was Catholic and I went to Catholic school and I was in the first grade and I knew God was going to save me for this rabbit adventure. Right. So I'm in there and I put my hands together and I'm still hanging over the front and I'm in the middle and I do really loudly so they could both hear me. Start praying, dear God, I really want a rabbit. Can I have the rabbit that was at the fair? I really want the rabbit. So I go through this whole mantra, right? And I close my eyes. And you guys, it's weird. I look back on it now. It's over 50 some years later. And I think to myself, there was that feeling I had that later on plays a big, important part of my life in manifesting. It's a pure feeling that I can't explain to anybody else unless they've done it themselves. And it's just like the time I went to the place of love and light. You can't explain that feeling of love unless somebody has experienced it as well, because it is beyond human love. It is way beyond. Okay. Somehow I must have tapped into it that day. Because we pull up to the driveway, and I don't know if you guys remember, but back in the day, every farm has a gate. You got to, get into the farmland. So my grandfather is looking through the gate, and I'm not really paying attention at this point, but my grandmother's starting to look around. She's looking at me, looking at him, and there's a black spot on the other side of the gate. And he opens the gate, and there is a rabbit, same kind, same ears, same size, a male, just like the one I left. It's an identical twin of the rabbit that we just left at the Multnomah County Fair. And I'd only been praying for 6 blocks or so, or a mile, whatever. So God worked really fast. And he walked up to it, was just sitting there waiting for us. It was the craziest thing. And so my sister starts clapping, and I'm like, oh, cool. My grandmother looks at me, and that's the day she knew that I was the one of the 21 grandkids that had the gift, because she had something similar, and her and I used to read each other's minds. And there's whole stories about that in my family about, where's your grandmother? I go, okay, give me a second. I kind of like, okay, wait a second. And I'd close my eyes. And what I was doing was I was remote viewing, but I didn't know it. Because I'd see through her eyes where she was at. And I'd say, oh, she's at the grocery store. No, she's getting gas. No, she's buying clothes, whatever. And my family would just accept it because I was the one who knew what was going on, right? And then when I got a deck of tarot cards when I was 13 years old, from my other grandmother, who was the Italian fortune teller of the Italian neighborhood in Portland, Oregon, I was the only one out of 28 grandchildren on that side of the family that she gave the cards to and said, you know, you'll be able to do this. So everybody in the family, it's so weird to me. Everybody in all of these families is like, we don't believe in all that mumbo jumbo, but the minute something's coming up, man, they run to me for a tarot card reading, right? So it's so interesting, you know. And then when I started having the UFO stuff and seeing the ghost and, you know, all these things are going on, they're like, oh, she's crazy, but how's Uncle Bill, right? You know, it's so funny how that happens. So anyhow, but that rabbit story, I mean, I'm still to this day trying to wrap my head around it, because 3 months after that happened, the kids that own that rabbit walked by our driveway, saw the hutch, walked up and said, oh, we had a rabbit once. Can we see yours? And then they look inside and it's their rabbit, because it escaped that day. But it was sitting right there in the driveway. And I was done with rabbits by that point. Okay. So I was like, oh yeah, here, you can have your rabbit back. Right. So it was a lesson from God. It really wasn't for me to have that rabbit forever. It was a complete, you know, like bringing full circle my connection with my grandmother, the realization that I was the one in the family that needed, you know, help with this, because it's hard being psychic to that point alone. You got to have somebody helping you, because it gets really weird at different points. You know, you don't want to be bringing people bad news. I mean, I even quit doing tarot card readings by the time I was like 20, because I was right too much and I could see too many things going wrong with people. And I would tell them, you know, just, you know, you might not want to do that. And they'd go ahead and do it anyhow. And then they'd destroy something. And I'd say, I kind of told you not to do that, you know. And then they're like, it's all your fault, you know, you should have stopped me. And I'm like, well, how can I stop you if you're not going to listen to me in the first place? So I was done with that by the time I was 20. And yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of things that happen when you're really, really psychic that are got to be tuned in to who's actually going to accept the responsibility of what you're telling them. You know, it's a tough haul. So anyhow.
Well, I'll tell you what, the audience, of course, these viewers are probably like us, have a big smile on our face. Of course, we love stories like this and are very much in alignment with all of these things. And so I have a
our listeners
energetic affinity for you. So thank you for being with us and sharing your beautiful story. Let's talk a little bit, if you don't mind, about the Mount Shasta retreat. Of course, we're all going to kind of be there. And you mentioned, if our audience doesn't know, they're going to know as we direct them to your website and things like that. You've had many, many, many different types of encounters in your life. Your open-minded state, your open to energy platform obviously helps to be the conduit for some of this crazy stuff. I know you're going to be talking and doing a presentation on something that resonates with you on that day, I guess, to be talking about. But what I want to know is this. I think I know the answer because we navigate through our own things. How did you in your life, you know, find that bravery, you know, to kind of keep going, keep being who you are, keep allowing the stuff to come out, and not really try to shut yourself down and stop talking to people about it, or even perhaps start holding judgment on your own self about whether you're okay or this stuff is real? How do you think you worked your way through that? Because I know we have a lot of people that are like, oh, I don't know how you got through all that stuff. I had to cut that off for myself, or I had to cut that off for myself. How do you think you navigated your way through it? Do you think it was with your grandmas and things like that, help like that?
Well, getting through my teenage years with my two grandmothers kept me okay with it all. And then, like I said, when I was 20, I kind of stopped doing it publicly because it just got a little strange, and I'm not doing this anymore. And I was a professional artist. I was a professional dancer at the time. You never know by looking at me now, but I was. And I also was a jewelry designer and a graphic designer. And I had a life, and I've been married 3 times, and I had a show dog at one point, and I used to train dogs. And I mean, it goes on and on. I mean, I've had many, many careers, and now I'm a professional bookkeeper. I've been doing that for 20 years now. Yeah, 20. And I'm what they call a full charge bookkeeper, which means I do people's their finances, their taxes, I keep track of their investments. I take care of, pension plans for them. I mean, it goes on and on. Payroll, I do everything but, sign the bottom of the form. I let the accountant do that, but I get it all ready for them. But yeah, I've had a lot of different careers. I've run dance companies. I've run nonprofits. I've run a California Association of Marriage and Family Therapists. I was their associate director. I've done a lot of things. And during that time, I would always do this too, kind of on the side. I was always doing something here or there. Like I'd go to a meeting or a conference or whatever. I really was in the background until I was 53 years old. I got really sick in 2009 and I almost died. And that's another whole story. Maybe I'll tell that one too. But I got very sick. I lost all my clients. I lost everything. If it wasn't for the local church, I wouldn't have been able to pay my rent. And it was a real, rude awakening. And I was laying in bed one night after I was recuperating. I had an allergic, besides being really sick, I had an allergic reaction to the dye they put into you for a scan. And I got slight radiation poisoning. So all my muscles were really weak and my hair all fell out. And it was ugly beyond the whatever illness I had that I was in there for. And I just woke up one morning and I heard a voice in my head saying, "This is it. We've given you a vacation and now it's over. You have to go to work." And I was like, oh, great. I always knew it was coming because, and I also went to the Berkeley Psychic Institute. I mean, I did all kinds of, stuff over the years. But there was one point when I was going to the Berkeley Psychic Institute that I had an angel by the side of the bed that touched my forehead and took me to the place of love and light. And when they threw me back into my bed, it gets crazy from there. But when they threw me back into the bed, the last thing and the only thing I really remember out of the whole conversation was, "You have work to do. You've got, there's a plan for you. You're not coming back here yet. You got stuff to do." And so that was it. That morning I woke up, I heard a voice in my head say the same thing. "You've got work to do. We've given you a vacation. You're 53 years old. Other people don't get to wait that long." I couldn't believe the humor in all this. I was like, who's talking to me, And so I thought, well, maybe I'm supposed to be doing this now. And within 6 months, and I swear to God, I don't even know how it happened, and nobody else does either, because people came up to me and they said, "I know you." And I'm like, "What do you mean you know me?" I mean, at a conference, "I know you." And I said, "Well, and I was also conference producer for a major organization. I'm not going to go into it now." And so I went to a UFO conference in 2010 to cut to the chase. And I ran into all these people and they said, "I know you." And they said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, I think I'm supposed to put on a conference." And they went, "Oh, okay." Turns out it was the last conference I was at in 2010 that Vicki Jack put on for the UFO conference in the San Francisco Bay Area. So I just started picking up the mantle, and I've been doing UFO Con here since 2012, since she left. It took me a year or so to get it, pulled together. But yeah, I mean, it was just kind of like it was thrown in my lap. But seriously, within 6 months, I knew everybody in the UFO community. I mean, it's just crazy stuff. I mean, it's like the phone would ring and it'd be like, Lynn Buchanan, or it'd be George or Tom Danheiser with George Norrie, and people would just call me out of the blue saying, "I was supposed to call you." And I'm like, "Really? You don't even know me?" "Oh, so-and-so told me to call you." And I'm like, "Okay," and it's so crazy. And all I know is that God is working, because they said, "You've got to change your life. You've got to go do something else now, and you've got to do it for us. So here's everybody. We're going to throw all the dominoes on the table, and you're going to know them all, and you can do whatever you need to do with them." And thank God they've all become good friends of mine, and they've helped me out, and they've been just lovely to me. And the conferences have been so much fun. And that's where I met Rob Potter, because Rob, I met him one day at another conference. He's wearing his pyramid on his head. And I walk up to him and I say, Jesus, are they giving you any telepathic communication on a regular basis with that? And he goes, it's constant. I can't stop it. I'm like, well, maybe you ought to take it off and take a break, you know? And we started laughing about it because I said, you know, if it's really that bothersome, you should be wearing it all the time. And so that's how I met Rob. And he started speaking at my conferences back in 2013 and has never stopped. And he's always got amazing stuff to talk about. And I love his stories about Valiant Thor, Dr. Stranges, and Venus. And oh, God, it's just so amazing. But yeah, I mean, that's how I got thrown into it. And it's a much longer, complicated story. I will tell you a little bit about the illness, though, because this has been very interesting to me. I do dabble in what everybody calls the dark side, and the reason I am is because the angels or whoever has put me in this position has said that's where I've got to go do the battle. So I do that, and then I slide back over into the light, and I go, oh, thank God, give me a break, because I can't take this much longer. And then I go back in, and I get battling again, and then, you know, we make a little progress, and then I'm back in here getting my light fixed, you know. And then, so we slide back and forth. But here's an interesting thing. In 2009, I ended up in the hospital for about 16 days. And it was some type of pneumonia. They still don't know to this day what I had. I triggered a CDC alert because it was during the H1N1 scare, and nobody come in my room. They all wore hazmat and everything because they couldn't identify what the heck I had. And everybody else that was in the ICU at H1N1, they knew what they had, but they could not figure out what I had. So that's just a precursor to what happens next. So I finally get out of the hospital, and a year later, I'm feeling kind of sick again. And they always said, you know, when I got out, they said, if you feel sick again, you better get your rear end back here before you did last time, because last time you were almost dead. And so I did. I went into the emergency room. And the doctor that was there, I'd never seen her before. And I was a frequent flyer at this emergency room, and I'm not going to go into why, but I knew a lot of the doctors there. And this woman comes in, I've never seen her before. And she goes, oh, hi, I'm a rotating ER doc. I said, oh, rotating for what? She goes, well, we go around the country after we've, you know, decided that she just got out of the Army. She had worked at the CDC, Fort Detrick. She'd done all that. She was a virologist, and now she wanted to be an ER doc. And I'm like, okay, cool. I didn't really play into it until the next few sentences here. So then I'm listening to her, and she goes, yeah, we were traveling around to see where we want to live and where I want to work. I do 3 months at each hospital, and then I pick the one I want. And if they want me, I go live there. I go, okay, cool. And she goes, I want to go look at your x-rays from last year. I'll be right back. She comes back. She's got a folder. You know, they print out all the x-rays now. They aren't on film. So she opens the folder, and she's looking at it, and she goes, oh, my God. She goes, what did you have? I said, I had pneumonia. She goes, this doesn't look like pneumonia. I go, what do you mean it doesn't look like pneumonia? And she goes, well, look at this. And she holds it up, and she goes, see all this? She goes, these are perfect circles. You've got, looks like popcorn or cotton balls were stuffed in your lungs. Pneumonia is spread out, and it's kind of dark and white, and it's layered out like fingers. She goes, this is all near the bottom mostly, and it looks like balls upon balls and ping pong balls. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then under her breath, she says, God, if I didn't know better, I'd swear this has got to be man-made. And then she shut up. She realized what she said. She closed the folder and said, you're going to be fine. Your x-ray's clear. Oh, they taken me to x-ray, by the way. And your x-ray's clear and whatever, go home. Okay, I'm fine with that. I'm like, that was weird, but, you know, whatever. A year and a half later, I'm doing a radio show, and a friend of mine calls me right when I'm done. And he goes, I just got back from my hairdressers. And I said, why are you calling me out of breath? He goes, I ran home. You got to hear this. He goes, I waited till you got off the show too. I was listening as I was running. I go, oh, you're crazy, man. What's going on? He goes, my hairdresser was dating a guy at the Presidio in San Francisco. and she thought he was a repairman for the Army. She was laying in bed with him in one of those, trailers. They used to have a bunch of trailers at the Presidio where the visiting guys would come in where they didn't have regular bunks or places for them to stay. And she goes, I was laying in bed one morning and he got up and he put on they had these air conditioning outfits and they had an air conditioning sign on the side of the truck. And she thought they were working as contractors for the military to fix air conditioning units. So she's laying there and she hears him talking to the other guy. The bedroom door was open. They're drinking their coffee. They're getting ready to go. And he goes, well, who's our target today? And the other guy says, well, I don't know, but let's look it up on the thing. And they open a folder. She hears him opening some papers. And then, oh, okay, that's the address. Oh, God. And then the other guy says, that air conditioner is going to be hard to get to. He goes, yeah. God, he goes, I just hate this when we have to spray this stuff into their air conditioner and it's really hard to reach. He goes, yeah, we're going to have to get a better ladder or an extension on this thing. She hears him talking about this. And then she realizes they're spraying the stuff into these air conditioners to hurt people. It's like that Legionnaire's disease stuff. And they're actually killing people with this. They're a wet works team, they're an assassination team or whatever. And she she doesn't say anything. He comes home. Within one day, she's packed her bags and she is gone. She's gone. And he told me, he goes, Lorien, I never believed you because what the beginning of this whole thing was, I turned on my air conditioner one day and within 24 hours, I was almost dead. Okay. That's the beginning of this whole thing that I didn't tell you. So then this is where, again, I didn't really believe him either. I was like, yeah, whatever. Who believes stuff like that? It's all, dark side stuff. I don't want to know about it. Right. So then another year and a half goes by. I'm on a radio network called Veterans Truth Radio with Gene Chip Tatum, who's an ex-CIA, and he's turned out to be a really good friend of mine. And he's listening to this story from the very beginning. It's the first time he'd ever heard it, about me turning on the air conditioning all the time in the hospital, the doctor from the CDC, my friend with the guys from the Presidio. And he types in to Skype, stay on after the show. I have to talk to you. And I'm like, okay. So the show ends. I talk to him. He goes, Lorien, they gave you the fizzies. I go, what the hell are the fizzies, Chip? He goes, the fizzies were created in 1952 or 53. Don't quote me on what year because I can't remember, by the CIA. And what it is it's MRSA, it's fungus, it's pneumonia, it's everything you can think of thrown into one big soup. And they sprayed in air conditioners, and it was the Legionnaire's disease came from that. It was a lighter version of it. And I've killed presidents of countries with that. And I said, what? And then the next thing out of my mouth was, well, if you think they did that to me, you tell me why they did it in 2009 when I hadn't even started doing anything yet and nobody knew my name. And then he said the most important thing that's ever been said to me in my entire life. He said, they know the future, don't you? And I'm thinking, okay, so who am I shaking up and what am I doing to cause them in 2009 to try to get rid of me before I even do anything? So that tells you how intertwined and how complex and how interesting, if you want to call it that, this whole game that we're in, this whole time travel, dimensional beings from other places, even our government and maybe the reptilians and God knows what's going on. It's all interconnected. And that's one of the main things that they've been telling me over the last 20 years. I get downloads, I get visions, I get talking to. I mean, there's a whole story about me driving over the Golden Gate Bridge and them saving my life just by yelling at me in my head and me fighting with them. They're like telling me what to do, and I'm going, no, I'm not doing it. This kind of stuff. I mean, this has been going on my whole life, right? So I get these crazy visions, and what's interesting about them is they all involve how we're going to be as light workers moving the dark out. And it's a very interesting, complex subject, but it's going to involve everybody's consciousness getting to a certain point. but it can't be this, and I hate to say this, and please, everybody out there listening to me, don't take this the wrong way, please. I love the people out there who are trying to do let's bring in, the aliens and we're all going to converse. And we got the harmonic convergence going on and everything's beautiful, right? There's a whole piece they're missing. They've got to embrace this piece of the dark side, and they've got to be able to dispel it while they're doing that in order for those beings to be able to get here, because they're also battling with these energies too. If we think we're the only ones that have the dark side to deal with, then we're sorely mistaken, because they've showed me what they have to battle with, and it goes way beyond what we're dealing with. And it's energies, and it's archons, and it's the devil. I mean, it's Satan. It's, whatever you want it to be. It's reptilians. But there's a dark energy when you get up into those higher dimensions that it takes a lot of work to keep yourself in that space and be protected all the time. And people need to really wake up to that. And I hope that my talk in Shasta is going to bring in a little bit of that. And I'm going to also give examples on how to fight the dark side, as well as bring in the good. Yeah, because ask yourself this question. Jesus, the ascended masters, all the aliens I've ever met that are beautiful and amazing, they all say the same thing. They believe in a God, but they also believe in the dark side too. If you actually talk to them, and that's another part. I'm writing a book right now. I hope to get it done soon, called Aliens. Angels are aliens too. And it talks about how it's our responsibility at the end of the book to actually converse with these guys and figure out what it is they're trying to give us to ascend. It's not ascending into the light or the next dimension. It's ascending away from the evil on this planet and recognizing the evil and how to get rid of it. And I'm hoping that I can figure out some exercise we can all do together to kind of work on that a little bit. But yeah, so anyhow, that's what I'm all about. I try to look at both sides. I try to be the duality, the yin, the yang, and I just try to pull it all together so we can all get out of here without having to come back. There's that too, Well,
Lorien, thank you so much. I, can sit here and continue the chat with you. Perhaps we will have another chat.
Everybody that we interview, this is going to be
such a fun
awesome conference, isn't
awesome. And it's fun to find kind of your energetic tribe, We don't need to be talking about that right now on this interview, but Lorien, please tell everybody how to find you. Let's talk about your website and how they can connect with you, please.
Well, the best thing to do is to listen to my radio shows. I've got 2 on Monday, and they are at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern on Revolution Radio. I'm on Studio A, and to get there, you go to Freedom Slips, like it's slipping away, freedomslips.com, and that show is called The Fenton Perspective. And then my next show on Monday is at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern, and it's on kcorradio.com, and it's called The Fenton Files. And I touch upon, in both shows, the first show I touch upon more UFO and spirituality. The second show is a lot of conspiracy, and I'm a huge JFK buff. People laugh at me because I'm into all this, the white lady and, ascended masters and all this. And then they go, well, that's really cool. What do you like to do in your your spare time? I go, I'm a JFK researcher. And they're like, what? And I put on all these JFK conferences. I put on, I'm putting on Assassination MurderCon next year. It's going to be wild. Anyhow, that's my fun thing to do while I'm doing all this on, as a regular life, right? So we talked a lot about JFK on that show and RFK and the assassination and how it plays a big part in how these people got to the level they are nowadays and are controlling our life. Because that was a coup d'etat, and that was the first time they ever got their grips on our American consciousness and psyche, and actually they touched the world that day of that assassination. And now we're seeing we're reaping the horrible benefits to them of this whole mind control system that they've got going on right now, keeping us under lockdown and COVID and, you know, all that. We're not going to go into that, but anyhow, that's what I talk a lot about that on the second show. So you can pick, you know, pick your poison. You get spirituality and UFOs and aliens in the first couple hours, or, you know, spirituality, UFO, aliens, and JFK and other things, and politics in the second show. And then you can visit my website, which is my name, LorienFenton.com. It's spelled Lorien. Fenton is FENTON.com. And I don't put much up there right now because I'm kind of in the process of redoing it all. So that's there. And then if you want to check out my MUFON group, see, I'm also a MUFON section director. I have a meeting every month in Petaluma. And right now they're worldwide because I'm having to do them on Zoom, just like we're doing right now. So you can join in on our MUFON meetings. You go to MUFON, that's MUFON, MarinSonoma.com. That's Marin County, Sonoma County if you're in California. So it's MUFON, MarinSonoma.com, and look to see who our next guest is. I actually think I've got Tom Whitmore for August. It's the first Saturday of every month. And Tom Whitmore, who is now kind of helping to run MUFON. We've had a little tragedy with MUFON. I'm sure you guys are aware of that. And he'll be our guest, actually, for the first Saturday in August. So that'll be an interesting show, to say the least. And then I'm putting on Time Travel Con on August 15th. It's a Saturday, and that's going to be fun. It'll be all online. I've got Andy Bashago, Jerry Wills, Tolek, let's see, who else? Oh, Marshall Barnes, who's actually a scientist around time travel, and a few other people. It's going to be fun. That'll be a good day. I love time travel.
Doesn't love time travel. That's right. What a great conversation. You've been extremely generous with your time. We know how busy you are. And so thank you so much for being so gracious and kind with us this evening.
Wonderful to meet you guys. I can't wait to see you in Shasta.
Thank you. We feel exactly the same way. Thank you to the viewers who have caught this program. We invite you, of course, to come on out to Mount Shasta with us, visit the website. You've been listening to these interviews. You know how to get a hold of us or this program and get information on the event, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be a great week.
Wow.
We're going to be there all week.
Yeah. We're going to be there all week.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Thanks, everybody. And continue to stay tuned as we continue to bring you the most fantastic presenters and guests who are going to be at this conference.
You never know who we're going to bring next.
That's right. Thanks, everybody.